Welcome to another chapter of Read Aloud. We are going to be reading chapter 4, Mavic Knows Stuff. And in this chapter, Mavic's going to reveal some pretty important things, but there are some things he is going to hold back. So I want you to think, for your thinking question, what do you think he is hiding? All right, let's go ahead and get started. Chapter 4, Mavic Knows Stuff. Ella! Mavic's voice echoed through the forest. Birds flew from the trees in panic from the sudden racket. Come on, Ella, stop hiding. Aurella ignored him. Please tell me you didn't drown in the pond, because it's like only 2 feet deep, and that would be the most embarrassing death ever. I'd never forgive you for that. Aurella rolled her eyes and shook her head. I'm over here, Mavic. Shut up before you wake up the entire forest. She heard Mavic's boots stomping up behind her, but she didn't turn around. There you are, Ella? He asked uncertainly. Aurella frowned. Mavic never said anything uncertainly. He was the most impulsive and straightforward person Aurella had ever met. He'd once told a rude butcher that he looked like a baby donkey. He often threw bullies into the horse trough behind the orphanage, with their pants pulled over their heads. And 3 days ago, he tied Gia's brother, who'd been making fun of Aurella, to a cow that was relieving itself. He didn't even feel bad about it. It was his oddly uncertain tone, more than anything, that made Aurella turn around. When she saw his face, his dark gray eyes were opened wide. Ella? Yeah, it's me, bonehead. Why do you keep asking? He was quiet for a long time. He tilted his head to the side, staring at Aurella in a way that made her feel very uncomfortable. Then he punched his hand and shouted, Dang it! Aurella jumped at his sudden exclamation. What? Mavic swore to himself. I was hoping this wouldn't happen for a long time. Dang it, dang it, dang it. If you don't start making sense soon, I'm going to take off my shoe and throw it at your face. I don't know how to tell you this, Ella. But if you haven't figured it out by now, you're not going to believe it coming from me. Aurella took her shoe off and held it up threateningly. You're a witch, Mavic blurted. He bit his lip and raised an eyebrow. I mean, that came out wrong. I mean, you are a witch, but I didn't mean for that to sound so... Not you too, Aurella yelled. She angrily lobbed her shoe at Mavic's head. He caught it easily as Aurella growled and stormed away. Mavic caught her arm. Oh, please, just let me explain, then I'll let you beat me up all you want. Aurella squirmed her way out of his clutch. She whirled and folded her arms, glaring up at him. Fine, explain. Well, for one thing, look at your hair. My hair? You just called me a witch and now you're criticizing my hair? Mavic grabbed a lock of Aurella's hair and held it before her eyes. Her mouth popped open. She grabbed the lock of hair and examined it more closely. It was pure black, not a drop of red in it. Aurella squealed and dropped the hair. Also, your eyes are bright green. No offense, but it's kind of creepy. I like your weird indecisive color better. Mavic, I don't get it. Did you dye my hair? Is this some prank? Please, if I wanted to prank you, I could do way better than that. Well, I sure never did that to my hair. Oh, come on, don't act so surprised. You've been doing weird stuff like this since you were a baby. What, like by magic? Do you realize how nuts you sound? Well, what other explanation do you have? I'm starting to wonder. Were you actually sick today when you skipped school? Aurella looked down at her feet. She dug her toe into the ground. Ha, nice, he grinned. Mavic, I think you're totally full of beans, but let's just pretend for a moment that you're right. She shoved her hands in her pockets and paced, her brain working furiously to make sense of the situation. I guess that would explain all the weird stuff that always happens around me, she thought, then said, If you're right, and this is actually true, How would that even work?
Basically, you say the words and it happens.
That's it?
Well, you have to be speaking the language of the witches, but that's something that just comes naturally. You probably speak it without knowing it.
But how could I have done this without meaning to? I never said anything about making myself look like this. Mavic studied her. His mouth pulled to the side the way it did when he was concentrating. He took a seat on a large boulder and patted the space next to him. Aurella sat down, scowling.
Has anyone else seen you like this?
No?
So, you must have done it once you got to the forest. What were you doing before I found you?
Nothing. I was just playing with my locket, and then I opened it and found this. She showed Mavic the piece of paper still folded up in her hand. He examined it closely and grinned.
That sneaky lady.
Oh, wow, that cryptic remark just explains everything.
All right, just sit tight and let me explain. And stop interrupting, I enjoy hearing myself talk.
Aurella rolled her eyes.
I'm not sure exactly what this says, but I'm guessing it's some disguise that Morella must have left with you in case you ever needed to get away. To protect you, you know?
Disguise how? Protect me from what? And who on earth is Morella? Please, Mavic, you're raising more questions than you're answering.
Morella was your birth mother. She was a witch too.
Wait! You knew my birth mother?
I'll explain some other time. As I was saying, it's dangerous being a witch. They don't teach you about it in school, but around the time you were born, there was a huge witch hunt. They were all wiped out. Every last one. You would have been killed too, but your birth parents were smart enough to arrange an escape for you before they died.
Mavic's face darkened with a flash of grief that was gone so quickly, Aurella wondered if she imagined it.
That paper in the locket, he continued, it's written in the language of the witches. I obviously don't speak it, so I don't know what it says, but I'm guessing it's some spell to make you look different. You read it out loud, didn't you?
Yeah?
Well, that's what happened then. Morella left you a disguise. You're wearing it right now.
How do I get rid of it?
Mavic flipped the paper over. Try reading this side.
Aurella took the paper and read the words. Tashsteven leta. Aurella leaned over the pond and watched her reflection as her hair slowly brightened and snaked into loose curls.
There you are, elf, Mavic smiled.
Aurella picked up a piece of hair and stared at it. Mavic, how do you know about all this? And you still never explained how you knew my birth mother.
I'll explain some other time.
Mavic.
It's getting dark, Ella. You need to get home. Come on, I'll walk with you.
Mavic stood and started walking back toward Lennox. Aurella sighed and hurried after him. Why won't you answer me?
I don't want to talk about it, Ella, he sighed.
Aurella stopped walking and frowned up at him. Mavic was acting very strange. It took quite a bit to upset him, and for whatever reason, he was clearly not comfortable discussing his experience with magic. So Aurella dropped the subject, for now, and asked another question she was equally curious about. So, are there guy witches too?
No, witches are women, duh.
So there aren't any men that do magic?
Of course there are, but they aren't witches, they're warlocks, and they're completely different.
How so?
Geez, so many questions.
Mavic.
All right. People that do magic are called manipulators. Witches can manipulate people. They can make them see, hear, or do whatever they want. And to do magic, they have to speak in the language of the witches. Warlocks, however, manipulate things. They can control inanimate objects. When they do magic, they use their hands. The language of the warlocks is a type of sign language.
Are there any warlocks in Dovis?
Nope, not a single one. Warlocks are even rarer than witches. Witches at least have a history here. Warlocks have never lived in Dovis.
What do you mean?
Ella, as much as I love hearing my own voice, I'm going to lose it from answering so many questions. Do I really have to give you a history lesson right now?
Just answer my question, bonehead. Mavic sighed.
All right, I'll give it to you in a nutshell. He stopped a moment and looked up, combing his memory for the facts. After a moment, he resumed his original pace. So basically, a long, long time ago, witches, warlocks, and humans all lived together. But there was this king that was restrictive on manipulators, and the warlocks got mad. They didn't want their powers regulated by the government. So they started a war. Some of the witches sided with them, and some of the witches sided with the humans. In the end, they divided the land. Witches and humans moved south and founded Dovis. Warlocks and the other witches stayed where they were. They renamed the country Rashtika, after the warlock who started the war. Aurella stopped walking. What? How do you know all this? I already said I'll tell you about it some other time. He looked away and nervously drummed his thighs as he walked. How could you not tell me about all this stuff sooner? Well, it was better if you were in the dark. The less you knew, the safer you'd be. I never asked you to protect me. Well, too bad. We can talk more about this some other time, but promise me one thing, Illa. He grabbed her arms, his eyebrows furrowed in intensity. What? She asked. Don't do magic in front of anyone. When people call you a witch in town, to most it's just a mean name. There are some that still believe in magic, and they're already suspicious of you as it is. Don't prove them right. His dark eyes bored into her, and Aurella understood for a moment why Sasha ran away from him. She was almost tempted to do the same. What if I do it by accident? She whispered. Learn to control it. You already know the language of the witches. You probably speak it sometimes without even realizing it, but you need to learn how to control it. If people found out what you are, that would be very bad. Aurella looked up at Mavic with wide eyes. His face slowly returned to its usual smirk. By the way, making yourself look sick? That's cheating. That's not what I meant when I said to stand up for yourself. He lightly punched her shoulder and casually walked away. It wasn't until then that Aurella realized that it was already dark. Mavic was going to be punished at the orphanage for being out past curfew, and it was all her fault. Filled with guilt and sympathy, Aurella walked home alone and snuck into her room through the window. She climbed into bed and rested her head on the pillow, not even bothering to change. She stared up at the moonlight and tree shadows on her ceiling. The shadows swayed and lulled her to sleep. Aurella's dream was a repeat of the events in the forest, with a slightly comical spin, as Mavic was wearing a dress and they were having tea on the forest floor with a deer. When she opened her eyes, the shadows had moved to the far wall. She stared at them. The longer she stared, the more she convinced herself that she'd let her imagination get away with her again. There was no way that actually happened. She couldn't be special enough to have powers. She was awkward Ella, the girl who hung out in the forest and had more imaginary friends than real ones. And she knew Mavic wouldn't be caught dead in a dress. No, it was definitely a dream, she thought. I'll tell Mavic all about it in the morning. He'll get a real kick out of it. With that, she closed her eyes and fell asleep. That was the end of that chapter, and the next chapter is called Creepy Brain Magic. So just a quick reminder, your thinking question was, what do you think Mavic is hiding? What information do you think he's holding back that he doesn't want to talk about? All right, I will see you next time for Chapter 5. Thanks for joining in on another read aloud. Bye, guys!